In 1921, the wealthiest black community in America was destroyed in just 24 hours. Over 35 blocks of thriving black businesses, homes, and lives were obliterated by an angry white mob, with support from local officials. Hundreds were killed, and 10,000 black Americans were left homeless. Have you ever wondered why history conceals such brutal truths? The Tulsa Race Massacre was deliberately erased from our collective memory for nearly a century, omitted from textbooks and public discourse. How did this happen, and why was it covered up? Stay with me as we uncover the truth and its implications for America today. What if the most prosperous black community in America was so successful, it scared white people into burning it down? Greenwood, Tulsa, was a self-sufficient economic powerhouse that made white businessmen nervous. By 1921, this 35-block district had black-owned banks, hospitals, law offices, and luxury shops that rivaled anything in white Tulsa. Greenwood was like a flourishing oasis in a desert of discrimination. Money stayed in the community, circulating 36 times among black businesses before leaving. Over 600 black-owned businesses served 10,000 residents, creating a thriving local economy. The district boasted grocery stores, movie theaters, a 750-seat opera house, and the Stratford Hotel, the largest black-owned hotel in America. O.W. Gurley, a former teacher turned entrepreneur, owned half the real estate in the area, symbolizing the community's ambition and success. This prosperity wasn't just about wealth, but about proving black excellence in a country that denied it. The numbers tell the story. In 1910, the average black family in America had $50 in savings. In Greenwood, that number was $500, equivalent to over $13,000 today. Teachers lived in two-story homes, doctors drove Model Ts, and the community had its own newspaper, the Tulsa Star, which reported on lynchings across the South while Greenwood thrived. But such prosperity threatened the established order, stirring fear among white elites. Every successful black business was a challenge to the status quo. Every black doctor disproved the lie that black people couldn't be educated. Every black homeowner showed the power of keeping wealth within the community. Greenwood's success wasn't just economic, it was a direct refutation of the myths that justified segregation. The more it grew, the more dangerous it became to white supremacy. Greenwood's vibrancy and self-sufficiency stood as a beacon of what was possible. But to those invested in maintaining racial hierarchies, it was a threat that couldn't be ignored. The spark that lit the fire. Ever heard how a single elevator ride destroyed an entire city? On May 30th, 1921, Dick Rowland, a 19-year-old black shoe shiner, entered the Drexel Building elevator operated by Sarah Page, a 17-year-old white girl. What happened in those 30 seconds remains unclear. Some said Rowland tripped and brushed against her. Others claimed he grabbed her arm. The building manager found Page unharmed and refused to call the police. But that brief moment fanned a pre-existing powder keg of tension, quickly igniting fury. By afternoon, rumors spread through white Tulsa like wildfire in a drought. The Tulsa Tribune didn't wait for facts. That evening's edition ran the headline, "Nabbed Negro for Attacking Girl in Elevator." An editorial explicitly called for a lynching, stating, "To lynch Negro tonight." No police report was filed, and Page refused to press charges. But the media's incendiary headline acted as a fatal spark. By sunset, 500 armed white men surrounded the courthouse where Rowland was held, demanding the sheriff hand him over. Here's what most accounts leave out. Greenwood fought back. Dozens of black World War I veterans, men who had served in France and knew how to handle weapons, arrived at the courthouse armed. When a white man tried to disarm a black veteran, a shot rang out. Chaos erupted. The white mob opened fire as black defenders retreated toward Greenwood. By midnight, the massacre had begun. The Tulsa Tribune's role was pivotal. They printed the inflammatory headline, stoked fears of a black uprising, and later physically cut the lynching editorial from subsequent editions. No complete copy of that day's paper exists today, but the damage was done. The real trigger wasn't the elevator incident. It was white Tulsa's fear of armed black resistance. For years, they'd watched Greenwood prosper. Now they saw black veterans standing their ground with rifles. That combination, black success and black self-defense, was more than racist whites could tolerate. By 10 p.m., the first white mobs crossed the Frisco Railroad tracks into Greenwood. They looted hardware stores for guns and ammunition, smashed windows of black businesses, and set the stage for the full-scale attack that would come at dawn. Dawn broke over Greenwood with the sound of airplane engines. White pilots flew over the neighborhood, dropping homemade turpentine bombs onto rooftops. Survivors described flaming rags soaked in oil raining down on their homes, igniting fires that spread uncontrollably. On the ground, white mobs stormed through Greenwood in cars and trucks, firing rifles into homes and businesses. They carried torches and gasoline, setting fire to everything in their path. Police officers not only failed to intervene, but actively participated, handing out weapons and deputizing white citizens. Firefighters who tried to extinguish the flames were turned away at gunpoint. By mid-morning, smoke from hundreds of burning buildings choked the Tulsa sky. Black residents fought back where they could. WWI veterans used their military training to set up defensive positions, protecting fleeing families, but they were vastly outnumbered. When the National Guard arrived, they didn't come to help. Instead, they rounded up 6,000 black men, women, and children, marching them to detention camps at the baseball stadium and fairgrounds. Meanwhile, white rioters roamed free. The numbers only hint at the devastation. Official reports listed 36 dead, but eyewitness accounts and funeral home records suggest at least 300, possibly more. Mass graves were dug that night, some still being discovered today. Over 1,200 homes were reduced to ash. Every church, school, and business in Greenwood's 35-block district was looted or destroyed, with property losses exceeding $30 million in today's money. The horror was inescapable. A survivor recalled seeing white teenagers posing for photos with burning furniture dragged from black homes. A black doctor was dragged behind a car until he died. A newborn was left to die in the street after its parents were shot. White women cheered as buildings collapsed. This was no random violence. It was a calculated purge of black success. Before the sun reached its zenith, Black Wall Street was gone, reduced to smoldering ruins. The Red Cross set up emergency tents, marking their first response to a man-made disaster in America. But the cover-up began immediately. Police blamed black residents for the violence. Newspapers called it a race riot instead of a massacre. No white person was ever charged. Not the men who dropped bombs, not the police who armed the mobs, not the politicians who encouraged it. The city government even tried to block black residents from rebuilding, and insurance companies denied all claims from Greenwood property owners. Here's something your history teacher definitely didn't tell you. The Tulsa Race Massacre never officially happened. Within 72 hours of the attack, the Tulsa Tribune removed every copy of the May 31st edition that incited the violence, while police reports vanished from station files. City officials ordered the destruction of photographic evidence, and survivors were threatened with violence if they spoke out. The erasure began before the ashes had cooled, a coordinated effort to rewrite history. When researchers in the 1970s asked about the massacre at the Oklahoma Historical Society, they were told there were no records of such an event, no newspaper archives, no police blotters, no death certificates for the hundreds killed. The official stance was simple. If it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. This was an active campaign to erase the truth. School textbooks completed the cover-up. A single, flavorless sentence in a 1990 Oklahoma history textbook erased decades of suffering. Whites burned black homes. No mention of deaths. No explanation of why. No context about Black Wall Street's destruction. For 70 years, Oklahoma students learned more about the Boston Tea Party than the burning of an entire black district in their own state. This omission shaped collective memory, leaving generations unaware of the massacre and its devastating impact. The first official recognition came in 1997, 76 years later, when Oklahoma finally formed a commission to study the massacre. Their report called it the worst race riot in history, still using the misleading riot framing. They recommended reparations that never came. The commission found mass graves, but the city refused to excavate them. Even in acknowledging the event, officials downplayed its significance. When survivors tried to sue for compensation in 2003, the court ruled against them because the statute of limitations had expired. The government hid the crime so well that by the time victims could speak openly, it was legally too late to seek justice. Even today, the fight continues. Oklahoma only added the massacre to state curriculum standards in 2020. Schools still aren't required to teach it. How many more truths remain hidden behind layers of deliberate forgetfulness? Here's the uncomfortable truth. America doesn't forget its history by accident. It disappears deliberately. The Tulsa Massacre wasn't an outlier. It's part of a pattern. COINTELPRO sabotaged black leaders. Redlining stole generational wealth. Tuskegee experiments lied to patients. These aren't gaps in our history books, they're erasures. Uncovering these stories is like lifting a heavy curtain that has long concealed our shared past. History is not just to be learned, it demands reckoning. So ask yourself, what else don't you know? What other communities had their histories buried? Now you know. What will you do with it? Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share to show your support.